I also think in terms of building a soul-aligned business, in an ideal world, all entrepreneurs would be able to align their business to their cycle, but we don't live in an ideal world. However, to the best that you can, if you're not able to align everything, that's okay. But to the best that you can, I really do think your business, like the benefits from doing that are going to come back to you tenfold. Productive times of the month are going to be that much more productive because you're listening to your body and responding to your body and your hormones.
Welcome to Next Level You podcast. I'm Stephanie Dingbaum, your host, your biggest cheerleader, and your go-to girlfriend for real, raw, and uplifting conversations about leveling up in life. As a mental health therapist with over a decade of experience and a business coach helping women elevate their lives and businesses, I'm here to guide you through the mindset shifts, holistic practices, and manifestation tools you need to step into your most authentic, next level self. Whether you're here to ignite your personal growth, elevate your professional game, or simply rediscover you, this podcast is your invitation to dream bigger, go after your goals, and unapologetically claim the life you deserve. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. It's time to up-level, manifest, and glow.
Welcome back to Next Level You podcast. Today I have Kristi Norman here. And for those of you that don't know Kristi, she's actually my VA. That's a little fun fact for you guys in case you didn't know. But also, I know Kristi because we have a local female entrepreneur group here that meets once a month, and I met her through that group. And yeah, when I got to a point in business where I knew I needed additional help and I needed to take some things off my plate, it was just a natural progression to hiring a VA, and Kristi came with high recommendations. And then as I'm learning more about her, come to find out she's like, well, she knows a lot about a lot, but she's like this expert on all things like cycle syncing and astrology. And there's probably more than just that, Reiki and all the things. And so I thought this would be such a great conversation to bring her onto the podcast. I have been wanting to talk with someone about cycle syncing as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And her name kept coming up for me. And so here we are, recording a collab today. So Kristi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so glad to be here. And yes, you're right. So I do virtual assistant work now and also help mainly women, small business owners in the wellness space with social media marketing and virtual assisting. Prior to this, I would say this is my third career.
Love it.
Prior to this, I was an elementary education teacher for 6 years. And then in my 5th year of teaching, I went back to school for massage therapy. So I've been a massage therapist for almost 20 years, be 20 years next March. And probably 15 of those years, I have focused mainly, actually through the whole 20 years, I focused mainly on women's health. And I was a doula for a little while during that time and realized that I couldn't do the on-call for lots of reasons. With my kiddos being small at the time. But I've always had an interest in cycle tracking and period problems. And so my main focus with massage for a lot of years has been myo-abdominal therapy. And I see clients now very part-time for that work. And the main focuses are challenges with your period and fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. And my love of all things menstrual cycles was really birthed with challenges with my own cycle at age 18. So this has been a lifelong learning of how to work with my own cycle, and then my passion for sharing that with lots of other people.
Oh, I love that. That's an amazing story. I had no idea that you used to be in the education arena. So that's where I was before I started my business, was a social worker.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I worked with like a local area education agency and was contracted at a school for 4 years as their social worker. And there's a lot to be said about the education arena. I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but there is a lot to be said about working in that arena. So that's fascinating.
We'll have a side conversation about that sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. So your own story, your own journey with your hormones, with your cycle is what led you here. Can you share a little bit more about like what was your story? What did you go through?
So it's like a lot of our sort of evolution stories. There's so many different pieces that were kind of happening all at the same time. But in kind of a linear fashion, it was around age 18 that I really started to feel this pull to track my cycles, because at the time I was in college, I was in chemistry class, and I was having a 21-day cycle. So like every 3 weeks I would get my period, and it just so happened that every 3 weeks in chemistry class we would have a test. And I know. Wow. and they kept lining up, and I kept, I had this sense like I don't think as well when I'm bleeding. And here I am having these chemistry tests during this trimester, and I'm like struggling. And I did have, some issue with painful periods at the time too. And so I was searching online to try to get a sense of like what I was already feeling in my body and start to get some language around that. And that's really where it all started. And then if we jump forward into my teaching career, I taught at a Catholic school, and I taught first graders first, and then I taught fourth graders, and I had to teach sex education. And I know. And I was nervous about it at first. And then I realized it totally lit me up to talk with these young students about, age appropriate menstrual cycle awareness and all of those things. And I just really loved their questions and their curiosity. And again, that kind of sparked something in me like, wow, you really like to talk about this stuff, and you kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then fast forward into my career as a massage therapist with that main focus of, working with women and finding that our cycles are not separate from us and who we are and all of the environmental things around us, like our work, our families, our kids. And that really moved me into teaching classes about it. And
oh, wow.
So I've taught many different iterations of essentially what I like to call conscious menstruation. So not just like ignoring our period and its symptoms until it arrives and then forgetting about it again, but like really tuning into each of the phases and how we feel and how we can work with that, aligning our schedules, aligning what we say yes to, what we say no to, all of that.
I love it. So that's fascinating. Not recent. I was introduced to this, I would say about, maybe a year ago. And it was mind blowing to me because it seems like such common sense as a business owner. Yeah, I have full control over my schedule, over my tasks, over my productivity. Why would I not align it with my cycle? Like, it seemed like such common sense, but I couldn't believe I hadn't thought about that. And, naturally, when a new cycle starts, I feel sluggish. I don't have motivation. I just want to sit in my sweats all day on the couch and do behind the scenes work. And it was kind of like, well, why can't I? Like, I'm my own boss now, And so it seemed like such a silly, why didn't I think about this type concept? And so I think it's one of those things as a business owner that is not talked about enough, but it's so important. Why don't you start? Can you I'm sure this is going to be overview for most people. Can you just go over the phases of the cycle?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I do want to say one thing too, to your point and stuff, like why it seems like such common sense when we do start to really like tune in and learn about this. Right. And I always like to start my classes by first saying, like, it's not your fault that you don't know this information. And in a way, like, as soon as you start listening to your body, you realize, oh, yes, I do know this information because it's all in me. But it's not our fault. We weren't taught this. Our parents weren't taught this. No. Probably our grandmas weren't taught this either. So there's really just this beautiful rebirth that we can do over and over. And especially, I think anyone can benefit from this information. I think we have an advantage being in business for ourselves that we can really, really align our schedules. Right. And at the same time, though, like for those listening who, have a full-time job and they don't have the freedom or flexibility to like leave work or take a day off or things like that, there are strategies and we can talk about those later.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But it's like once you realize this, you do go through that process of like, oh, darn it. How come I haven't, like, why didn't I know this?
Right. And I don't want to like blame our school system because fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that's who first primarily teaches you about your cycle. I mean, that's kind of what starts the conversation. And then usually you go home from there and like talk to your mom about it more. But it's almost like we need to revamp how those conversations look and feel, because man, if I had known what I know now, if I had known that back then, I think my teen years might have gone better. I think college would have been better. I just think it's one of those things we should really look at revamping how we're talking to young girls about this.
I so agree with you. Yeah. And I especially like, well, I'm thinking of two different things here. So I don't know which direction I want to go, but like,
no, you're good.
I think what excites me a lot is that I'm having these conversations with so many women who are your age, who are my age.
Yeah.
We get to talk to our young people differently.
Yes.
And I think we have more of a comfort level than like our moms did, even our teachers who were teaching this, you know, because there's been so much taboo around, you know, the words you use to describe the cycle and all of that just wasn't talked about. But if we can get comfortable with it, then our young people are going to, like our kids, if we're teaching, you know, other people's kids, they're going to feel that confidence and that comfort that we're bringing, and then they are going to feel empowered in that way. So it's exciting to me.
I agree.
But yeah, the other thing I was thinking of is that I have 2 boys. Oh. I have 2 sons, and I also have 4 bonus children, and one happens to be a girl, a daughter.
Good.
But like, you know, when our kids were growing up, like, especially my boys, like it was important to me that they know this information too, because they are going to have partners someday.
Yes.
And so it was talked about. And one of my sons was like, oh yeah, like I want to hear about it. I want to learn. And the other one was like, don't talk about uncomfortable things.
That's
but
awesome.
I feel like they are a bit at an advantage now that they are both in steady long-term relationships with women, and they have a comfort level with the cycle, which I'm so happy. So happy.
I agree. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But I can dive into the phases of the cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
This is actually something that I love talking about. And there are a few different, so I like to meet people where they're at. And so I'll describe this like in a few different ways. But when we're talking about the cycle itself, it is not linear. It is a cycle. You can think of it as a circle or a spiral. That's really helpful. And so when we look at a circle, there's no beginning or end. So it's a continuum. One cycle births into the next over and over and over. But we do have some still points during the cycle. We also have some places of pause. We have some different ways that we tune in to each. And so to talk like broad overview, we have 4 phases in the cycle. And quite honestly, we can blow this out to like however many days are in your cycle. So 28 days, 21 days, 35 days, you're a little bit different every single day. Within that cycle. But we have 4 main phases. So the menstrual phase, this is, we would say like the first phase of the cycle. This is when we're bleeding and shortly after. And then we go into the follicular phase. And this is when hormonally estrogen is the driver of this phase of the cycle. And our follicles in our ovaries are rapidly maturing to get ready for the star of the show, which is ovulation.
Right.
And so then ovulation is the next phase. And that is when we, you know, if everything's working properly, we ovulate, and then that phase starts at ovulation and then moves into, you know, the next days after that. And then we move into the luteal phase. Progesterone is the driver of the luteal phase, and then we bleed again. So that's our cycle continuum. And if we overlay that with, I like to talk about 3 different ways to overlay that. Okay. If you are a moon girly and you love to pay attention to the moon cycle and the moon phases, that's one that if you're searching for menstrual phases, you will often see this online. And the menstrual phase is the new moon phase. So when the moon is still up there, but you can't see it for a few days, that coincides with the menstrual phase. And then the follicular phase is the waxing moon. So the moon is growing, your follicles are growing.
Right.
And then ovulation is the full moon, and that's when we're shining.
Yeah.
Right? Just like the moon. And then the luteal phase is the waning moon. So the moon is shrinking and, getting ready to start that cycle again.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Think of it that way.
Yeah.
And then I also like to use the planting cycle. So if you're someone who grew up on a farm or loves to garden or grows flowers, this is a really easy way to think about the cycle as well. The menstrual phase is like seeding, so planting seeds. And then the the follicular phase where we're growing again, this is like sprouting. Those plants are sprouting, they're baby plants, they're growing. And then ovulation is the blooming or the blossoming of the plant. And then the luteal phase is harvest. And then we start over again.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've named the phases too in some of my teaching. And so again, just to give us the idea of verbs, action words.
Yeah.
To give us an idea of like what is the sort of general essence of each of these phases. And so the menstrual phase is release. It's all about letting go, resting, moving inward, and visioning what's coming next, but not actually taking action on those things yet. So it's about letting go. And then the follicular phase, this is the build phase. So what are we building in that phase? Obviously, we're building our uterine lining. We're also building those follicles, but we're also building relationships. And connections, and we're taking action. So we're building projects that we're working on, right, in our work or in our home life. And then ovulation, this is shine. So often, if we're working the cycle really well and physiologically we feel good, then this is the time that we shine. This is the star of the show. We're taking big action. We're really out there with life. And then we start to turn inward in that luteal phase, which is burn. And burn is a double-edged sword. And we can talk more about this later. But that luteal phase, for most women, if they come to me and they need help with their cycle, it's because of the luteal phase. It's because of what we've labeled PMS, right? And so with burn, we have an intense energy at that time in our cycle that can help us like get really clear on the actions we need to take to like really do the hard workouts, to really tie up loose ends before we go into bleeding. But also sometimes it feels like I just want to burn everything down. I'm done with my business. I can't handle it anymore. I hate everything. It's that kind of energy. And so it just like with any phase of the cycle, it can be used to our detriment or it can be used as a treasure.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. So how could somebody use this to their benefit if they are really wanting to get if they're really wanting to use this to like in terms of productivity, if they're really wanting to use this to their benefit so that I am really getting the most out of myself during the times of the month when I can, what times of the month are better for productivity? What times of the month should you give yourself that slowdown?
Yeah.
What would you say?
For sure. That is a great question. One thing I want to say before diving into this is that, like with the moon phases, it's about, it's a 29 and a half day cycle with the moon phase. And each of those phases is essentially equal. So if we have the full moon, which we just did a couple days ago, we can expect that in about 2 weeks, we're going to have another new moon. And then in about 2 weeks after that, we can expect we're having the full moon. Our cycles are a little bit different in that we don't just take, like, if I have a 28-day cycle, I don't just divide it by 4 and then 7 days is each phase, right?
Yeah.
So like my luteal phase is like 9 days and I have a 26-day cycle right now. So the rest of my phases are shorter.
Right.
And we can talk about like how to know when you're moving from phase to phase.
Okay.
But specifically speaking to like business, your action phases are, I would say, the very end of your menstrual cycle when you start to feel like you're out of the cave again. With the menstrual cycle, I like to have that analogy of like, I'm going into the cave. I am like done for a few days. And I try to rest for 2 days in the beginning of my menstrual cycle. And then when I'm done bleeding, after 3-4 days, I will tune in and I'll ask myself, do I still feel like I'm in the cave? Do I still need alone time? Am I still visioning? Or do I feel like I have energy coming in? Yeah. And so I say the end of the menstrual phase because a lot of us, around maybe like cycle day 6 or 7, we feel like we're out of that cave and we can start taking action on the things that we were visioning. So there's something to do around your business in every single phase. Right. But the real action phases are end of the menstrual cycle, through the follicular phase, through the ovulation phase, and then maybe the beginning of the luteal phase. And then again, this is going to depend also on how you're feeling in your body, because if you have difficult ovulation, for example, some women feel very tired around ovulation, then okay, well, I'm not going to beat myself up about this. This is supposed to be shine week, right? But I don't feel like shining. I feel like napping every afternoon. Well, then that's what you need to do, because you need to listen to your body and not force things. Yeah. Same with the luteal phase. Often at the beginning of the luteal phase, we have a lot of energy, but it can be a very wired energy. And so it might be hard to know what to do at that time, because it's like, I can't sit down and work on this 3-hour deep work project because my body just feels like I gotta go, right? Yeah. So then you have to listen to that, and maybe you're cleaning your office instead of trying to do the deep work, right? I know you mentioned before we started recording, launching things. Yeah. Again, I feel like this is very personal. In the beginning of my luteal phase, I feel kind of spicy, saucy. So this is a great time for me to do content creation, because it can have a little more of an edge. And I think that's helpful and good. Yep. Other people will be like, I definitely can't do content creation during that time because I can't think of the right words that I want to say. Interesting. Launching, my best guess for launching for most women is follicular phase and ovulation phase, because that's when you feel like being most out there. Yeah. And with most of us, if we're launching, that means we're showing up on social media more, we're sending more newsletters, we're doing all of that. Oh, yeah. And that's going to be really hard to do when you're bleeding and you're tired, or you're having the irritation symptoms that we would typically call PMS, right? And you don't feel like showing up, right? Or that you get kind of depressed if you don't have people signing up for your program and you're doing all this work to launch. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, it does. Yeah. I never thought about even the content creation side of things. I always feel like those ideas come to me through downloads when I'm grounded in the month. And obviously naturally those days, those down days that I give myself are probably going to be those specific days of my cycle. But I never really paired the two together. It just makes sense. That's typically when I get my ideas, is when I just give myself permission to slow down, to have a down day, to work on things behind the scenes, and maybe not get dressed and cutesied up for the day, and it's I might go on 2 or 3 walks throughout the day. And those are when the ideas are really flowing to me, is when I'm not forcing something, you know? So that's amazing. I also think what's interesting about how the moon comes into play with all of this is I have noticed over probably just the last 2 to 3 years how the moon does impact us in such a big way. And I talk with my therapy clients about this all the time. And, we used to joke when I worked in the school, you knew when it was a full moon in the elementary school because you could tell, right? But it also impacts our productivity as business owners, and it impacts, my service days when I'm actually seeing one-on-one clients. I see that being impacted when we're at certain times of the moon cycle as well, which coincides with where I'm at in my cycle. And it's all connected. Everything. It's all connected. Yeah. Totally. And it's, I like to, when I coach women with this stuff and their cycle specifically, a lot of us feel very drawn to the moon, like the natural moon, before we feel drawn to learning about our cycle. And I really like to flip that for people. So pay attention to the moon within you first, and then the natural moon flavors what's already happening within you. And the seasons do that as well. A lot. I've just seen this pattern over and over through the years working with clients where the January, February, March periods for many of my clients they'll have a harder one. They'll feel more depleted. And I really think this is us coming out of winter and the rapid gain of light that we have, especially starting around the equinox. In the spring, and we are affected by that. If you tune in, I always want people to be tuning into the cycle within them first, and then look at the layers out from there.
Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to elevate your mindset and manifest your goals? If you're a female entrepreneur or someone who's been dreaming of starting your own business, I have something so exciting to share with you. I'm Stephanie Dingbaum, and I've just launched my 12-week coaching program, the Up-Level Method. It is designed to help you gain clarity, build confidence, and create the soul-aligned business and life that you've been dreaming of. So here's what you'll all get in the program: weekly one-on-one coaching calls tailored specifically to meet your goals, Voxer access for real-time support and accountability throughout the week from me, customized tools like journal prompts, meditations, and follow-up emails to keep you aligned and on track throughout the week, plus guidance to overcome imposter syndrome, rewrite limiting beliefs, and shift into an abundance mindset. The Up-Level Method isn't just about checking off goals. It's about helping you step into your power as a CEO, make decisions that light you up, and build a business that feels truly authentic to who you are. And the best part? The current pricing is literally the lowest that it will ever be. If you're even slightly considering it, lock it in now, because this investment in your future self will pay off tenfold, I promise you. Payment plans are available, so don't let finances hold you back from stepping into your best self. This is your chance to stop second guessing and start showing up for your business and life with purpose and intention. If this feels aligned, DM or email me today to set up a free clarity call. Let's see if the Up-Level Method is the right fit for you. All the details are in the show notes. This is your time. Let's make 2025 the year you up-level everything.
But if you tune in and you notice, when you're bleeding with the new moon, for example, so you're having your new moon, and the moon is new, that can feel like an extra inward cycle. That might be a more symptomatic cycle because you're paralleling with the moon. Some women may get more intense, intuitive downloads and things like that during that time, which I believe if we all can create space around our period, that is a time where we have altered consciousness. We can tap into something that we don't normally in our day-to-day tap into. Side note about that, sometimes on day 1 or day 2 of my cycle, I feel like I shouldn't be driving because I feel like I've taken some substances. We are really in an altered state. And so if we can work that energy well by, taking that time to rest, walking, like you said, just going for a walk and clearing your schedule, journaling, we can get some really great downloads about our businesses, about problem solving in the rest of our lives as well.
That's fascinating.
But so the new moon and new moon phase. And then also if you flip that, if you are having your new moon and you're bleeding with the full moon, you might feel my symptoms aren't as bad this month. I feel more social during my period. I can actually say yes to a social thing when normally I would say no. And so you feel a little difference there as well. You can.
Interesting. Okay. So thinking in terms of my cycle, I am, for the most part, lining up with a new moon when I start my new cycle. I'm on day 18 right now, so I will be in approximately 2 weeks. In approximately 2 weeks, I will be starting a new cycle, which will be approximately when the new moon is. So that's interesting. I never thought about it in terms of that, but and I think another interesting piece of the puzzle, and I find I am talking about this with damn near every therapy client I see, and even some of my coaching clients now, is how our hormones play a part, like those hormonal symptoms that we experience. Like you talked about, like times of the month where your anxiety or your depression might be a little more heightened. Ever since I started the journey of balancing my hormones, I have noticed, one, how those symptoms, they're obviously impacted by our cycle because, it's a hormonal cycle. But even like with the moon phase, it's so interesting. It seems like my symptoms used to be heightened when my hormones were not balanced. And now it just feels it feels like it's supposed to be. It doesn't feel like I'm having these high highs or these low lows. And I feel like we live in a society where like, Western medicine is often just normalizing PMS symptoms. They can be really bad, and it doesn't have to be a normalized thing. Like the extreme crampage, the extreme bleeding, like it doesn't have to be a normal thing. In fact, we shouldn't be normalizing it. We should be looking more into the why behind those things. And that's something that, like I said, I feel like I'm talking to almost every female therapy client about this who's over the age of at least 20. And because I feel like it's not being talked about in certain Western medicine arenas. And I just feel like that's a piece of this for sure. Is like, if you feel like there are symptoms that coincide with your cycle, like, there's times of the month where your anxiety peaks, but it's like off the charts. Like, that doesn't have to be normal. Like, let's talk about that. Let's have conversations about that. And I've just, like I said, in the last couple of years, that has become it's become a topic of interest for me, but it's become such a common topic even in therapy, because I do naturally look at the whole body with my therapy clients. And I don't feel a lot of our Western medicine providers do. So somebody has to, right? And thank God for our local integrative practitioners that we have that are approaching those conversations. But it's something we also need to talk about because, it's hormonal based. And I think not enough people know. Like when I first told my mom, for instance, that anxiety and depression could sometimes be caused by our hormones. If we were just to do a hormone panel, we could probably decrease half of the anxiety and depression diagnoses that are out there. And she was like blown away by that, because it's not common knowledge. Right. So I just think, sidebar, that's something that people need to take into consideration. If you feel like you're having those high highs or those low lows during certain times of your cycle, like talk to your provider about it, or talk to your therapist about it, because it doesn't have to be normal. It doesn't have to be,
Right. Yeah. It's the whole, it's common, but it's not normal. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can, if something is out of balance with our cycle and with our life because we're not aligning things, it can feel like we are going crazy.
Right.
And we are meant to feel different in every phase of the cycle. That is the way the cycle works. And that when we're working it really well, that can feel like I said before, like a treasure, like gifts. There are gifts in every single phase of the cycle.
Yeah.
But when we don't know that, or when something is out of balance or too far out of balance because we're not listening, then yes, it gets into that territory of like, this is not safe, right, for me, or this is like something is really off.
Yeah.
And then we need to look at it. Hormone testing, lifestyle change, I think can do can do wonders for us, and also therapy, like you said. Interestingly, when you bring up therapy, I had in one of my classes quite a few years ago, I had a therapist who, was learning about the cycle in the class. And interestingly, she asked a really amazing question. And she said, for my female clients, when in their cycle should they come to therapy appointments? When should they have therapy appointments?
Yeah.
And it was such a good question. It spurred a very long conversation with the group. There were about 10 students in the class with her. And there's not a hard and fast answer because it's very specific. Some women might find that in their luteal phase, because they have more of that edge, that they can really talk about the hard stuff during that time. Whereas other women feel like because they are so sensitive in the late luteal phase, they are just like, they're crying and they can't get out what they need to get out. They need to feel a little more level-headed and a little less emotional. And so then they might come for a therapy appointment, like in the follicular phase. But I think that's something really to think about with, clients who do go to a therapist, whether they see you or somebody else, to play around maybe with, if they're not doing something like weekly, for example, maybe they're doing a monthly appointment, to kind of play around with what phase they are seeing you in and see how that affects the session. And I think it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. I even feel like there are definite times of the month where I am just like shining in therapy with my sessions. It's like obviously that ovulation time. And then even sometimes at the very start of a new cycle, I am just like, I'm on point, and I don't know if it's because my intuition is stronger at the start of a new cycle or what, but like, it's so obvious to me that there's like those certain times where I am like just killing it in the therapy room. And so, yeah, there's definitely something to be said. If you're a service provider, pay attention to those days or weeks or time of the month when you feel like you are just seriously killing it.
Yes.
And definitely be intentional about scheduling those one-on-one or group sessions, because you're going to feel like an MFing rock star after those sessions, and you deserve that like dopamine hit. So I just think it pays to like really listen to your body, internally, mentally. Yeah. Really like coordinate if you can. I know not everybody can, but if you can, just do it.
It's so true. There have been times where I've had changes with my cycle. And so, my period maybe showed up like a little bit earlier, a little bit late, quote unquote. It's always right on time.
Yeah.
But I would have like a Reiki session with a client, and I would feel spacey, but like the wisdom that was coming through for them was like so on point. And they were like, this is the best session I've had. And it's like, okay, because I'm tapping into something else and you're getting me at a really good time. Normally I would be resting.
Right.
But I think that is for sure, as a service provider, something to tune into.
Yeah.
I'm working toward I don't take a full week off when I have my period, but I have a very light week when I have my period. I know what I should be saying yes to and should be saying no to during that time. Now, where that gets really tricky is like I'm on cycle day 10 right now.
Okay.
And I have a lot of energy. I feel social. I'm getting a ton of work done, and I'm getting closer to ovulation. And where this gets tricky for a lot of us is that, you're planning things out all the time.
Yeah.
And if I don't have a bunch of notes in my calendar for like late luteal phase and period week, I am going to say yes to too many things during that time because I feel great right now.
Right,
so in my calendar, I have, little notes that says like your period's expected here, no in-person clients, these days. And then even the week before or the couple days before when I'm in late luteal, I have a note that's like, okay, you're in late luteal here.
Right.
You are not going to be wanting to do these specific things, so don't do them.
Okay.
I tend to feel a bit anxious in my late luteal, like a couple of days before my period.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to be in person in sessions with clients during those days. That's just me.
Right.
But again, because I feel so good right now, I might flex that. I might try to. But I've taught myself over the years with practice, like that's a no time. I can say yes to a lot right now, but I don't want to say yes to my future self in those phases.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, that's a perfect segue. So in general, if we go through each of the four phases of the cycle, what like tasks, so to speak, would be ideal for each phase? So like the start of a new cycle, what task would you say, like, is that best for like service providers, in-person sessions, or behind the scenes? Like what types of tasks would be ideal for those different phases?
Yeah, great question. So menstrual phase, ideally we can take 1 to 3 days off. Maybe some of you can take more days off. That would be amazing.
Right.
But take time off and think of yourself as a queen during that time. So sitting, you know, if you have a partner or kids who can bring you snacks, that would be great. Yeah. But in your that, you know, try to have at least one day of rest or like a very, very, very light schedule.
Love it.
My invitation is to have 1 to 3 days like that. And during that time, that doesn't mean that you can't be doing anything for your business. You're just going to do the very light things. Yeah. Like checking emails or maybe not. For me, no in-person clients at that time. I also, if I can, I try to avoid doing like Zoom meetings or, you know, meeting with a new lead or something like that. It's just really about rest. And a big, big help during that time is to vision what you want next. If you are an affirmation person, if you are a goal person, this is your time to like really tune in and say, what do I want for my next cycle? So like, I don't write I do write monthly goals, but it's not like May 1st to May 31st. This is my goal. It's cycle day 1 to the end of that cycle. And so journal, meditate, go outside, let the information that wants to come through for you come through. Ask yourself the hard questions during that time, like what is working in my business? What's not working in my business? What do I want to focus on? What's my next project? That's a great time in the menstrual phase.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Then moving into follicular, you want to start taking action on those goals. And so if that's getting a project in place, even if it's something that's not going to come to fruition for another 6 months, that's the time to start taking action. This is the time to start, you know, scheduling those meetings, scheduling in-person clients. If your energy feels good, which typically it will during that follicular phase, then, you know, you can like load up your schedule with people, right? Yep. Same with the ovulation phase. And again, if you remember at the beginning of our conversation, if you're having some symptoms outside of what is normal, then these phases might not feel great for you. I know a lot of women who at the end of their menstrual phase still feel very, very tired. They feel depleted. So you got to pay attention to that. So we're just speaking in generalities. But follicular phase, move, take action, doing. Ovulation phase, same thing. So like we mentioned, launching, content creation, networking, like show up to those meetings, follow up with leads, you know, stack your schedule. If you know, see a lot of in-person clients or things like that. Typically, you can do that through the ovulation phase as well, because that's a very doing phase. And then luteal is kind of half and half. So the beginning of the luteal phase, you're often still having that energy of like, I want to get stuff done so that I can rest soon. But this stage can feel like irritation. That the sort of touch point of the beginning of the luteal phase is like starting to feel like what didn't bother you last week is bothering you now. So it's like that first moment of irritation. It's also like that first feeling of like, this doesn't feel good. Okay. And that can be something in your business, like you just get annoyed with a team member or a client or something like that. And you're like, normally I wouldn't be annoyed. What is going on? Right. Or it's like you snap at your partner for something that you normally wouldn't, or your partner's jokes aren't funny anymore, you know? Yep. And also something like the intimacy, the sexual touch that you normally like, you all of a sudden don't like, you know, so that's getting into luteal phase. And for work, then I really think what's super beneficial in the luteal phase is to have a list of tasks for your business that you can actually see the endpoint of when they get done. So to compare this to like cleaning, if you've got dusty bookshelves and you dust them, you know that they're clean, right? Oh yeah. So this is like clean your desk, clean your office. Okay. Inbox 0, you know, delete emails, unsubscribe from emails. Yeah. Those are such good tasks in the luteal phase. And then think about any other loose ends that you need to tie up with projects, with people. You don't want to go into your menstrual phase feeling like, oh, I forgot to email so-and-so. Oh, I forgot to follow up here. Oh, this isn't done yet. So use the beginning half of the luteal phase for that. And then the second half of the luteal phase, this is, again, it's like the disseminating moon, the waning moon. It's getting very, very small. What we're doing here is we are reviewing the last cycle. Okay. What went well, what needed to change. A great question to ask here is, did I align my cycle well and my schedule well? And then when you can ask yourself all those things in meditation or walking or journaling, then you see when you start bleeding, you can ask yourself, okay, now what's next? And it's that cycle continuum.
I love it. Yeah. I always kind of compared that menstrual cycle to like that wintering season, like you talked about earlier. Like that is the wintering season in general, when we're looking at the seasons, is such a good time to slow down, to go within, to listen to your intuition, like you were saying. And that's exactly what you were saying we need to do at that start of the menstrual cycle, is like go within, slow down, give yourself permission to rest. And so I love how those things synchronize. I just think that's such a beautiful way of looking at the start of a new cycle. I also think in terms of building a soul-aligned business, in an ideal world, all entrepreneurs would be able to align their business to their cycle in an ideal world, but we don't live in an ideal world. However, to the best that you can, if you're not able to align everything, that's okay. But to the best that you can, I really do think your business, like the benefits from doing that are going to come back to you tenfold. The downloads are going to come to you more when you're naturally resting. Those productive times of the month are going to be that much more productive because you're listening to your body and responding to your body and your hormones. And so while I know for many business owners, it might sound impossible to do this, even if you can just take those baby steps, like for me, I can't always help it if I have a full day of therapy clients on the start of a menstrual cycle. However, maybe day 2, because usually it's every other day I see therapy clients. So maybe day 2 is that down day. So even though day 1 I saw clients, day 2 I'm going to give myself that down day where maybe I'm not going to be as productive. And so it's not like you're making this ginormous shift overnight to now, okay, I'm going to listen to my body now. My business is going to align. It's not an overnight shift that you can make, but just start making those baby steps, because your business will thank you in the long run, and you're going to feel better. You're going to feel more aligned. Therefore, your business is going to be more aligned and on point. And so I just think, even though it can sound overwhelming to make this shift, it doesn't have to be. Just those baby steps.
Yeah. I do have a couple baby steps that I would love to offer. These are like the first things that I really highly encourage people to do when they start on this path. Okay. The first is to always know what cycle day you're on. So wake up in the morning before you look at your app. Okay. Check in with yourself. What cycle day was I yesterday? What cycle day am I today? How does that feel today in my body? Yeah. And that makes such a difference when you're planning your day. And also, this works for you if you have irregular cycles too. So if you skip cycles, for example, and maybe you haven't bled for, 60 or 65 days or something, then you're on cycle day 65, and you can keep paying attention to that. And I have seen some amazing shifts for women who start to do this, where their cycles just start to regulate because they start paying attention. There's, it's a quote in business: what gets measured gets managed. And maybe a lot of you have heard that, but it is true with the menstrual cycle as well. So as soon as you start to pay attention, shifts happen. The second baby step that I suggest, because most of us have some trouble with the luteal phase, is to really, it's a perspective switch, to really stop thinking about yourself as crazy or off balance or out of balance when you feel differently in the luteal phase that you do the rest of the phases, and start shifting your schedule for that week only. So put it ahead in your calendar, this is my estimated luteal phase, and start making that, especially the late luteal phase, beginning of the menstrual phase, a little bit lighter. Start practicing saying no. And that's you'll notice huge shifts if you can do that.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention, and Steph, you sparked something when you, you're talking about like, this doesn't have to be huge and overwhelming.
Right.
The reason that there feels like such a disconnect with what we've been talking about and what our external environment is like is that we are all, as a culture, as a community, as humans, we operate on a solar cycle. We operate on the testosterone cycle. So it's the productivity cycle. What that means is that we have 24 hours in a day, and testosterone cycles in males on a 24-hour cycle.
Oh, I love that you went there. Okay.
Yeah. So if a man is working his hormones well and like everything is going well and there's not an issue, testosterone is highest in the morning and it starts to dip through the day, and there might be like a little peak and then bed, right? And so this is essentially because we have 24-hour days, and because we work during the day, like we are all in this cycle together, this solar cycle. And it works great for a lot of us most of the time, but it doesn't reflect our female hormonal cycle. We are not testosterone driven, even though we have testosterone in our system. We are estrogen and progesterone driven, and they are two very different hormones. So solar cycle, 24 hours, lunar cycle, us, a month. And so one thing that really helps me when I'm thinking about that is if you think about the actual clock, your period is like midnight.
Okay.
So I'll say that to myself. I'll say that to Josh, my husband. Sometimes like I am in perpetual midnight right now. I am bleeding. So these few days, it just feels like it's midnight nonstop. I'm tired. I need rest. Okay. And so that's something just to speak to, like, well, how come we don't know this? Why is this such a challenge?
Right.
It's because the rest of our external environment doesn't operate the way that we do internally.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's so important that you brought up the difference in how men cycle and how women cycle, because if most of us are living with a partner, then you are seeing those differences. And this could be a great conversation piece to bring up, maybe not at the dinner table, but, it could be a great conversation piece to bring up next time you're, alone without the kids. Like, it's important as a couple to be aware of, your wintering season. And I think relating it to the clock is genius, because that's exactly how you feel for those 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a book. So the reason that I don't talk about the seasons and overlay them with the menstrual cycle is because there's a couple different systems for that, and it can get a little bit confusing. So I would say the most popular system is the one that you mentioned, where winter is the menstrual phase. Yeah. But there's a very good book, and I've studied with this teacher. Her name is Suzanne Mathis McQueen, and she has a book called 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks. So it's just the number 4 and then seasons and then the number 4 weeks. And her seasonal system is a little bit different.
Okay.
Autumn, the fall, is the menstrual phase. Okay. And so I just tell people, like, you just attach to whatever way of understanding works for you. But I really like Suzanne's book because in every bigger section of the phases of the cycle, there's a man guide. And it is, when I ordered that book, I started learning alongside Suzanne in her classes. When I ordered the book and it showed up to the house, Josh grabbed it right away and he went right to the man guide and he read all of those sections. And it gave us a language to talk about my cycle and what, where I'm at, what's working, what's not working. And it's so helpful for couples, especially if you feel a little bit like, how am I going to broach this subject with my partner? reading those sections together would be super helpful.
Okay, love. I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes, and I'm also probably going to buy it for myself because that's
do. It's such a good resource. So
awesome.
Helpful.
While we're talking about resources, are there any apps that you would recommend for women in terms of tracking their cycle, or even like the astrology part of this too? Mm-hmm. Are there any apps that you use or that you've heard of or that you would recommend?
I don't recommend an app, and the reason being, I'm not telling people not to use an app because I have an app myself. But there's a couple of reasons. So one is I don't want you to get reliant on your app. I want you to tune into yourself first and ask yourself, what cycle day am I on before you look at the app? And I'm not going to lie, I'm human. Some days will go by and I'll say, oh, I better look at my app because I'm not exactly sure what cycle day I'm on.
Yeah.
The other part with apps is that the free ones especially, they sell your data, they keep your data. So I don't recommend using a free app and putting a lot of information about yourself or your cycle in it. Right. So the only thing, I think the app I use is called My Period. And it's like, it looks like a little diary icon with a flower inside. I know a lot of people use that one. All I put in, the only information I put in there is the start of my cycle. The first day. I don't even put the last day.
Okay.
Because it is nice to track that and to have that data over time and to see the changes.
Yeah.
But any other data that I want to keep or remember about my cycles, I'm putting paper pencil somewhere else, typically in my journal.
Awesome.
So I can't recommend an app necessarily, but I do think they are smart. I just think what's smarter is tuning into your own body first.
Yep, I completely agree. Yeah, that's
and
genius.
Then I can probably send you this. I still think I have it somewhere. I have a new computer, so I might have to search for it. But I had a graphic designer create a graph of the moon phases. And then there's little lines for each one. And what you do is you find like day one of your period and you write in notes. And then what you can do is like every month or every cycle, you have a new sheet and you write in the notes and then like where the moon phase is and where your period is.
Love.
So that's a really fun way to do it. I'm pretty analog. I like paper pencil.
Yeah. I love that.
Active writing, I think, is very, very important. Mm-hmm. And so this is a way to just track over time. So I'll look for that.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And I appreciate what you said about the apps because, through my fertility journey, it was like, in the beginning, all the doctors recommend, like, you need to find an app, you need to track yourself. But then when I got to that part in my healing journey where I was really trying to just surrender and release control, it was like that app was actually detrimental to being able to truly surrender because the whole point in having the app, I feel, is, well, one, I know it's like people feel like they're more informed as to where they're at. But like to what you said, your body does not lie to you. Your intuition, your gut never steers you wrong. So if you can just learn to go within and listen to your body and listen to your intuition and trust what it's telling you, that is not incorrect. Mm-hmm. And so detach from that, thinking the app is like the all-knowing, detach from that and just listen to you. Mm-hmm. I think that's perfect advice because I just feel like I was so over-reliant and it was just not helpful for me in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can appreciate that. And I think what can happen is we get hung up on shoulds then. Yeah. Well, my app says I should be feeling this way, doing this thing, having this body response. And when it doesn't happen, then we can get upset. Or we can overthink, right?
Right.
And I think that's true with our cycles too. Like, well, I'm ovulating, I should feel good. Kristi said I should be shining. Well, but maybe not because something else is going on right now. Yeah. Maybe you have been on a fertility journey and ovulation makes you sad right now because you haven't conceived. Like there's all of that's coming to play. Maybe you were just traveling for a week and the stress of travel, even though it was fun, that all those kinds of things can throw us off a little bit.
Yeah.
So we got to take it day by day.
Right. And in general, we need society to be more in tune with their bodies. And if we're teaching people to rely on technology and apps for information, then you are so disconnected from your body's inner knowing. And we need to raise a generation who's more connected internally to that. So I just think that's perfect advice. Just go within, trust your gut, trust your inner knowing, and just really listen to those bodily symptoms or those mental symptoms more than anything else. I think that's perfect. Is there any other recommendations that you want to share?
Let me look at my notes really quick. I think we pretty much covered everything, which is amazing.
Yeah, I feel like we did.
Oh, preventing burnout. We mentioned that prior to recording. So like working your cycle well, it's not going to 100% guarantee that you're not going to get burnout, because I think burnout is a huge message that we can be out of alignment in some way with an offering that we have, with a client even. And when you can really start to work with your cycle well, and you learn it well, and you practice, and you're tuning in with your day-to-day, and this is something that you're doing over time, you really can prevent burnout, because you're making sure that you're taking time to rest, to be active, to pay attention. I think that's, it's really helped me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's perfect. I also just think a natural part of the burnout, this could be a whole nother podcast episode, is just giving yourself permission to have boundaries. I know that's not necessarily connected to your cycle, but like as a recovering people pleaser, burnout, I'm preventing burnout in my business because I'm giving myself permission to say no when I need to say no. And that is connected to my cycle. I mean, there are times in my cycle where I just have to say no. You know, and right now I'm in a season of, I'm on maternity leave. And so, you know, I just was talking with a girlfriend last night and she felt horrible. They haven't been to the house yet to meet Augie. And I'm like, listen, I have actually been telling people no at certain times of the week, because some weeks we could have somebody visiting every day and that's just not feasible. And so it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to say no. In fact, that has nothing to do with your cycle. You should just be practicing that anyways, in my opinion, you know?
Yeah, totally. And like, it does have to do with your cycle. And I think it's, and you actually, like, you mentioned this, like, but there are yes times in our cycle and there are no times in our cycle. And so if you identify as a people pleaser, which like Steph just said she did, I definitely have identified as a people pleaser and continue to work on that for myself. The luteal phase is your best friend for practicing boundaries, because that is the phase where you really get to exercise your no.
Love it.
And it gets easier.
But
like taking those things off your plate, looking at your schedule and saying like, I wrote all these notes to myself that I was going to have a lighter week. Say no. Say no to that thing that someone's asking of you. And you can really make that a practice, especially in your luteal phase. There's really interesting information that I've read and I've been practicing, where it's like sometimes we need to say no before we can say our yes. And I really see this happening for me in my luteal phase. So like, for example, Josh will ask me like, do you want to go for a walk? In my late luteal phase, I kind of don't feel like I want to do anything. Like my body just doesn't feel great. Right. And I will have to say no first, and then I will tune back in and I'll say, actually, I do want to take a walk. Miles, my dog, needs a walk. It's a beautiful night. Then I can come back and say yes. But I have to say no first. And I think that becomes more prevalent if you are the type of person who tends to people please. So yes, play around with that. Play around with boundaries. This is huge boundary setting practice when you can say, I'm taking a day off when I bleed.
Yes. I agree. Yep. Totally agree. And if you're practicing that for your clients, then really what you're doing is, what you're modeling is a great practice, one, but you're giving them permission to do the same. Like if I tell you I need to move today's session to 3 days from now, and you respect that, then you know if tables are turned, you can do the same for me and no harm. You know, I just think that's a great, we can reciprocate that. It can go both ways. And just think about the ripple effect of that. You know, if the two of us are doing it, if you're doing that with your therapy and coaching clients, if they're doing that, you know, it's such a beautiful thing to think about. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I like to end before we do rapid fire questions, is there, if listeners want more information about any of this, is there a way that you would prefer them reach out to you?
Yes, I'll give you my website, and it's easy. It's just Kristi-Norman.com. And right now my website is full focused on virtual assisting and social media support, but you can click on the contact and just send me a contact message, or my email address is on my website. You can send me an email. And I do offer period power hours, I call them.
Awesome.
So it's an hour, it's a Zoom meeting, and it's a coaching session. So if you feel like anything that we talked about today sparks questions in you, or you want a little bit of assistance to look specifically at your cycle and do some troubleshooting, we can set up a period power hour. I also offer like groups of period power hours too, like if you want to do 3, for example. And that's a great way to continue this conversation for now. And toward the end of the year, it's kind of on the back burner right now, but toward the end of the year, I will be up and running with another group class. With conscious menstruation.
Awesome. I'll have to pay attention to that, because I definitely think that's something I would want to take you up on.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. All right. So I like to end all of my collabs with some rapid fire questions. So what is a small habit or ritual that makes you feel like your next level self?
Ooh, journaling. Number one, I have had a pretty consistent journaling practice since 2007. And it is so good for me. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I agree. Is there one mantra or affirmation that you currently live by?
Ooh, I feel like I work with so many affirmations all the time.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yes.
But one that I'm really loving right now, it's either Catherine Ponder or Neville Goddard. I'm not exactly sure who I got this from, but it is everything and everyone prospers me now. I prosper everything and everyone now.
Oh, I love that.
Really love that.
Okay. I love the word prosperous and using that in affirmations. So that's beautiful. Okay. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self?
Really good one. Do it scared.
Yes.
Just do it scared.
It's going to get you outside of that comfort zone. That's where the biggest growth happens. Yep. Love that. Is there one non-negotiable self-care practice in your week besides journaling?
Movement. Yeah. So that looks different depending on the day, depending on the phase of the cycle, but definitely movement of some kind, whether it's dance or walk, hike, or strength training. Yeah.
Yep. I can definitely relate. Okay, last one. What's one thing that you're currently working on manifesting in your life?
Ooh, well, I'm always manifesting kittens. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're full up with pets, but I am currently working on manifesting a couple more really highly aligned clients right now.
Yeah. Love that for you. For VA work?
Particularly social media. Help. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. But VA work too, like I'm open, especially if I'm so grateful. I have the best clients right now, you included. And I feel like we are all so aligned, and I have space for a couple more. So yeah.
Isn't that just the greatest feeling when you've built a soul aligned business and you feel that way about your clients? I just think that is such a great feeling. And I can say the same in my situation. That just really resonates with me. It's so great to know, like, I built this and I wouldn't change a thing about it because it's aligned. All parts of it are. That's beautiful. And there's something to be said. You mentioned trying to manifest the social media content creation. I can see why you love that, because before starting the business, the idea of marketing was so daunting to me and scary. But now I just crave that time of the month where I get to work on that stuff. I just love it. Like, I did not think that would be the case, but I think I love it equally as much as I love practicing therapy. So I get it.
Which I love, because I feel like you're an anomaly in that way. I definitely know small business owners who love to do their own marketing, but for the most part, I feel like they don't. And I don't love doing my own marketing, but I love doing it for other people.
Interesting. So do you outsource yours?
No, not yet.
That's so interesting.
I will. I think I will at some point, but I became really clear about that when I was just strictly doing massage therapy and teaching menstruation classes and stuff like that. I was like, I do not like doing my own marketing. Mm-hmm. There's something about it I like. I love the creative aspect. Yeah. And then when I started helping someone else, I was like, I actually love doing this for you.
Okay.
So it's not that I don't love doing it. It's just that it wasn't my favorite thing to do in my own business. Yeah, if that made sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Kristi, I so appreciate you agreeing to come on. This has just been a nudge that has been coming to me for the last couple of months, and you seemed like the perfect person to bring on to talk about this. And I just know like it's a topic that has been so intriguing to me in the last year. So I just know listeners are going to eat this up. And like Kristi mentioned before, if you want to know more information on this, definitely go to her website, go to her contact page and reach out to her. Take advantage of those power hours, those period power hours. I just think that is such a great resource for entrepreneurs or professionals alike. You don't have to necessarily be running your own business, but take advantage of that because like I said at the beginning of the recording, I don't feel like when we were kids, I don't feel we were educated on this like how Kristi educated us today. And so if there's something more you want to dive into, take advantage of that because it's such a great resource. I feel like it's worth every penny. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. This has been really fun.
All right, guys. Well, feel free to DM me if there's anything that you want to hear more about. If there's any particular subject that you would love me to do a collab on or solo episode on, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, until next time, I will talk to you guys all next week.
Real quick before you go, I just want to thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. And congratulations on showing up for you. Every step you take to invest in yourself brings you that much closer to your next level self, and I'm so proud of you. If you loved this episode, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration, or take a screenshot and tag me on socials so we can keep spreading the next level you energy. Thanks again for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Let's freaking go!